Told me what a bright light of a child he was. I forgive you. I love you. I'll be ready. Come straight home. I'll be there waiting for you.
From a broken man, husband, father, and FBI agent who couldn't find the moments of silence after suffering a loss to his family, but by the end, Tom finds the voice inside that ultimately led him to finding his forgiveness towards those around him, but more importantly, towards himself. Welcome back, everybody. We are here to break down episode 7, the season and maybe series finale of Task, which was titled A Still Small Voice. As this episode shows us a task force seeking answers and the Dark Hearts cover their tracks, a shocking revelation leads them to a final confrontation. We've got so much to talk about in this episode, but also share my thoughts about the overall season, how I would compare it to Mare of Easttown, and so much more. So let's not waste any more time. Let's break it all down. Full spoilers ahead. Now we pick up this episode precisely where we left last week's, and that's Tom sharing Grasso's file with Emilia. The damning truth stares back at them, but there's zero evidence found linking Tony to any wrongdoing in 2021, a report shockingly approved by no other than his chief, Mike. Now, despite the case now being officially handed over to the OPS, Emilia's resolve remains unshaken. Her priority isn't protocol, it's getting justice for Lizzie. She wants to return to the park where the sting operation occurred, searching for any overlooked fragment of the truth. Tom, understanding the weight of this plea, agrees. First thing in the morning, he promises Emilia, but first, he has to put Sam to bed, a subtle but significant detail that continues to show us that Tom is trying to find that balance between work and his home life. Emilia notices Sam is staying with him at temporary arrangement, as he says, which is foreshadowing a tough decision he'll have to make later in this episode. Now, for the first time I can recall all season, we see the narrative shifting focus away from our main characters, offering us more context into the shadowy operations of the Dark Hearts. We witness a private conversation between Vincent and Chief Mike. Vincent wants to sever all ties connecting them to Lizzie's death. Mike, however, is one step ahead, or so he believes. He's already planted the seeds, telling the feds that Grasso has been acting strangely lately. The plan is clear: frame Grasso as an unstable rogue, their perfect fall guy. When they inevitably take care of him, it will be designed to look as though Tony, consumed by guilt and madness, took his own life. Now, a correction on my behalf on the drug exchange that was talked about in last week's episode with Robbie. As is confirmed in this scene by Mike, that Robbie gave the drugs to Shelley, who would then in return gave it to Lee out of Reading. Vincent, fixated on damage control, could care less about the money involved in the drug deal, but Mike reminds him of the substantial sum at stake. Now their conversation is interrupted by a call from Vincent. It's Perry, who we know has been gone off the grid with Jason after the shootout. Vincent, holding all the cards, lays out an ultimatum. If Perry takes care of Jason before morning, Vincent and his crew won't come looking for him. Now, Perry offers no verbal answer, but his actions speak volumes. He hangs up and heads into the kitchen to grab a knife. Jason's footsteps are heard approaching as Perry stands silently, hiding a knife behind his back, ready to regain his trust with his so-called family and his brothers within the Dark Hearts. But we watch as Perry can't do it. He can't kill Jason. In his own twisted, sick way, he loves him, despite Jason being the very reason they're in this mess. This toxic, codependent dynamic offers a dark parallel in my eyes to what we see with Tom and Ethan's relationship, a father-son-like bond where the elder Perry finds himself unable to let go, even to his own detriment. But here's the thing I struggle with in this relationship between Perry and Jason. We are not meant to care for these characters who are the bad guys and have no grounds of being seen in a sympathetic way. In fact, or better yet, I'll speak for myself, I actively desire Jason's and Perry's demise, so this eternal battle that Perry faces doesn't interest me. Now, with all that being said, narratively speaking, Perry's inability to act creates a complex moral gray area, highlighting the loyalty that, unfortunately for Perry, Jason doesn't reciprocate later on. Now, this next scene delivers a disquieting visual. As we watch the camera moves past his body of water, we see a lifeless body slowly emerges to the surface. All we see is the person's hair and their shoes, and it's Aaron. Now, this is later confirmed, and while it's tragic, it feels oddly unserved in its resolve. I found it lacked any emotional resonance for me. We didn't get any reaction from the people I deemed to care for her, whether that be her children or her friend Donna. Instead, we're given Jason's reaction later in this episode, which for me simply didn't land the gravitas for such a moment. Now, throughout the rest of this breakdown, you'll hear me share my thoughts about these individual scenes, but also how I tie into the grand picture of the season. So with that being said, I wish this moment had been granted more time, allowing us to truly feel the devastating weight of Erin's passing. Again, it was unsettling to see her die last week, but as we'll discuss later, the payoff to me felt very underwhelming. Now, this next scene here I found to be fascinating, almost kind of jarring in the visual transition that follows. From Erin's submerged shoes, we cut directly to Tom's house, focusing directly on Sam's new shoes. Now, let me know if it was just me, but for a brief second, I thought we were seeing a future tragedy being revealed, and that being Sam's own demise, but thankfully, it wasn't. Now, the scene pivots to Emily, who's helping Sam organize his new belongings in his temporary room. Meanwhile, we see Sarah and Tom are making a list of other necessities for Sam, whose stay is projected to be anywhere between 3 weeks to a potential 6 months. Now, we watch as Sarah brings up a topic we discussed in my last breakdown. Is Sam a replacement for Ethan, a do-over for Tom? Now, we watch as Tom denies this, yet deep down, the unspoken truth lingers, perhaps on some subconscious level, it really is. Now, Emilia arrives and Tom shares the day's plan with Sarah. They won't be going to a fair. Instead, they're going to try to tie up loose ends. Now, prom promises to keep safe, a promise that I felt at the time was increasingly uncertain in this escalating narrative. I thought for a second that this was maybe the last time that Tom was going to be seeing his family. Now, from my experience, when you're watching any movie or show, to truly invest the audience in the journey of an antagonist, or in this case, a morally compromised character, the most effective method is to reveal their humanity through their family life. This brings us to Anthony Grasso. We see him paying a visit to his sister Frankie and his nephews. They catch up, frankly, playfully probing about his dating life, to which Tony admits he hasn't actively been looking for a relationship, which actually adds more context to him finding Lizzie in the middle of the situation even more tragic. But then the conversation shifts, weighed with the impending truth. Tony reveals that bad things are about to come out about him. It's here we finally learn of his true motives of working with the Dark Hearts. It's a simple motive. He was trying to provide for his family. The comfortable house Frankie currently lives in, to the excellent care their mother received in her final days, all were facilitated by Tony's dirty money earned from the people he shouldn't have been involved with. The burden has become unbearable, especially after Lizzie's death. He's done. He can't live with this anymore. He tells Frankie that he's going to turn himself in. Now, Frankie, with unwavering loyalty as his sister who knew him before he got tangled up with his gang, she tells her brother that no matter what is said about him, she knows who he truly is. You know, I find it so interesting how much the focus have shifted to Grasso in the latter episodes and how effective it's been, largely due to the compelling performance. However, something feels like it's missing. While Lizzie's death clearly serves as a powerful catalyst for his breakdown, I wished for more moments like this family scene earlier in the season. More glimpses of his eternal conflict, his silent struggle with his illicit lifestyle prior to Lizzie's death, to me would have further deepened our understanding and our empathy for the character, truly allowing us to witness the slow erosion of his soul. Now, back with Emilia and Tom at the park, they find the car Cliff got into the car accident in. Now, they also managed to find the busted phone that he last used, as they begin the process of putting the record to see what they can find. Now, back to the discovery of Erin's body, where the police also find her holding a chain, and it's Perry's chain with his initials on it. Now, I'll be honest, my immediate takeaway here is Perry's almost unbelievable carelessness. You would think someone in Perry's position, as long as he's been a part of the Dark Hearts, and I'm sure this wasn't his first time getting rid of a body, he would have been more careful getting rid of Erin's body, but clearly he wasn't. I'm no get rid of a body expert, literally no experience whatsoever, but based on, movies and shows and true crimes that I've seen, you would think that Perry would have at least found some rocks or something with weight to assure that her body didn't come up so quickly. Or scratch the whole water situation, why not bury her somewhere in the acres of land surrounding them? Now, as I say that out loud, I'm thinking to myself, not me making up situations to hide Aaron's body, but I'm just saying, I guess you could say it happened so fast that he didn't really have time to think it all over, but not noticing that she had his chain is just crazy to me. This oversight is so wild to me that it forced me to consider a more complex motivation. Was this true incompetence, or in Perry's twisted mind, a final sacrificial act? Did he leave the link knowing Aaron's case wouldn't be filed away as a random disappearance? Maybe it's a desperate attempt to find meaning in a senseless act for the sake of her children not growing up with the idea of not knowing what truly happened to their mother. This might be me again, just making up excuses for Perry and not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm just trying to find reasons why he would be so careless with his chain, but let's just move on. Now, back with Jason and Perry, Perry figured that Robbie sold the drugs before the meetup and the money could only be in one place, and that's with Maeve, as they planned to pay her a visit. Now, going back to that scene, I truly would like to have known exactly what was Perry's endgame with this whole situation. Did Perry think that he would get the money and him and Jason would ride off in the sunset together, always on the run from the dark hearts? Or if he got the money, give it to Vincent and the Mother Club and everything will be all forgiven and Jason gets to live? Now, at Donna's house, she overhears a conversation with Breaker, who's speaking with Jason about heading over to Maeve's. Now, later in the episode, we see Donna has Vincent over and she tells him about the phone conversation she overheard, and she tries to tell him that Maeve's got nothing to do with anything going on. Now, Maeve isn't his top priority at the moment, as Vincent just wants to know the location of Perry and Jason, as we see Donna tells him where they can find them, and that's hiding out at her mom's place. Now, at Maeve's house, she shows her friend the money, and Maeve has no idea what to do with it. Now, I don't know if they literally counted all the money, but they say in this scene that apparently it was $1 million in the bag, but we know the drugs were worth around $1.5 million, if not a little bit more, so I'm to assume that the $500,000 that wasn't included in that number she mentioned was maybe given to Lee as like a buyer's fee, or Robbie told Shelly she could take the $500,000, that way she can get from under her ex-boyfriend slash husband slash father for children, Ray. Now, Maeve is torn between turning the money into the police or keeping it because she knows that Robbie died for her and the kids to have it, but she also knows that someone will probably come looking for it soon enough. As we watch as Maeve hides it based on her friend's advice to wait 6 months to a year, and if the cops find it, she can just simply say that Robbie hid it and she didn't know about it, or if no one comes, she can just take the money and start a new life. Not a bad idea that we actually see comes to fruition a little bit later in this episode. Now, back with Tom and Aaliyah, they show Kathleen the phone records from Ray's phone and figure it was swapped out by Grasso. Now, they're going to need her help with getting their guns back, but also need Kathleen to investigate the evidence locker and taking the phone to prove that Tony took it.
I'm going to need you to help me put my pants on upstairs. Come on, you can do it with your eyes closed.
Back with Jason and Perry, we see Perry in the water, almost like he's trying to find a way to wash away what he did, as we see Jason finds out about Aaron's death and what was found in her hand. Now, in the baptism of water, we see Perry sees Vincent and the others are coming and goes to warn Jason, and as Jason is walking towards Perry, he stabs him and tells him that he knows what he did. Now, even though Perry is being betrayed by Jason in this very moment, Perry still tells him that they're coming and that he should make his escape. As Jason shoves the knife deeper into Perry, killing him, he leaves Perry's body in the water dead, a fitting mirror image to the way Perry left Aaron as we watch Jason runs away. So let's talk about this scene. How do you all feel this plot and this reveal of Jason killing Perry and them not having an actual conversation about why Perry did what he did? Me personally, I'm in two minds. One being it wouldn't have mattered why Perry did what he did because we've seen and heard how bad Jason's temper is, so he most likely would have had still killed Perry regardless. Now, on the flip side, my second thought being, we never hear Perry articulate his suspicions about Aaron, or more importantly, the fact that he has been protecting Jason from the Mother's Club hit on him this entire time. To me, it makes those previous conversations with Perry and Vincent feel a bit incomplete or maybe unsatisfying because this isn't a real payoff. The emotional payoff is almost incomplete in my eyes, leaving Perry's complex motivations to protecting Jason this entire season feel reduced to him being simply a liar and a killer. I will say one more thing regarding Perry's death by the hands of Jason. Thematically, this reinforces the show's ongoing meditation on father figures. Perry and Jason's lethal dynamic stands in stark contrast to the bond between Tom and Ethan. We have these two men, in Tom and Perry, who basically adopted their sons. Now, the tragedy here is not just the death, but the failure of Perry to earn the benefit of the doubt, even in his final breath. Anyway, that's just where my head's at, but please share your opinion and feelings on Perry's demise at the hands of Jason. Now, back at Tom's, we see Sarah and Emily hanging animal posters in Ethan's old room for Sam. Now, we watch as Sam asks if Ethan was into animals, as Emily gets kind of nervous because we know that Ethan is a sensitive topic in his house, but surprisingly, we see Sarah actually shares a nice story about Ethan's kindness. Now, you all know how I've been feeling a little lackluster about the Emily, Sarah, and Ethan plot, but what I liked about this scene here is how it sets up how later on what we see what Tom does, but in this scene, it's starting to plant the seeds for someone like Sarah. They're starting to forgive Ethan as they're allowing the happy memories of Ethan to come back. Now, back with Tom, Kathleen, and Aaliyah, as she's got the phone from the evidence locker. They try calling the phone, but they have no luck, meaning that it was just a plant phone. Now, in order to prove that Tony was involved, they need the real phone. Now, this is where Tom suggests that she get the analyst who we met back in episode 4 to do something that isn't allowed, but he's going to do it anyway, which I found to be a really funny moment. Now, they find the location from the last time the real phone was used, which leads Tom and Aaliyah to Grasso's house. Meanwhile, we find Mike, who is outside of Grasso's house to take care of him, like Vincent said at the start of this episode. Now, before going inside, we see Mike on the phone with Vincent, and he tells him about the money situation, and the line where we hear Mike mentions how they should split up the money, I instantly knew at that moment that Vincent wanted to get rid of Mike immediately after he took care of Tony. Again, remembering that Vincent wanted to get rid of all the ties. Now we watch as Mike goes inside Tony's house, gun in hand. The music's playing loud as Mike hits the corner, and we see Tony takes his gun and points it at Mike, and he makes Mike sit down and have a conversation. Now, they have a talk about how one in their position make up reasons for being dirty cops. It's here that we learn that Mike has been actually doing this for over 20 years. Tony has been doing this for the last 2 years and is eating him up from the inside. Tony tells Mike that he's going to basically turn himself in soon. Now, Mike trying to spin the situation and also stalling for time, Mike tells Tony there's a way out of this, and he tells him that Perry and Jason are now dead, but he also mentions the money has been found and that there's people heading over to Maeve's. Now, speaking of head, we see as Mike is talking, he gets shot in the head by Vincent, who then takes a shot at Tony, as Tony shoots and kills Vincent, and Tony was actually shot in the side during the shootout as he heads over to Maeve's. This is going to be a little bit of a nitpick for me, but these men in charge of the Dark Hearts are incredibly stupid, aka I blame the writing in this scene. Now, without a doubt, it was a shocking moment. I didn't see that happening in this moment. Like, I figured again that Vincent would eventually try to kill Mike, but I didn't anticipate it happening in this scene. My issues with this scene all boils down to the execution. Let's look at the scene from the inside out. Vincent came in and decided to shoot Mike, who's without a gun, instead of shooting Tony, who has a gun in his hand, and need I remind you, they're both here to kill Tony. It just seems so silly to me for Vincent to shoot at Mike first and not kill Tony, who again, they were there to kill Tony. Again, I know he wanted to kill both of them, but it just seems so backwards in my mind. I just felt like this was a point in the show that relied heavily on characters making fundamentally nonsensical choices to drive the plot forward. Also, going there without backup just seemed pretty convenient for Vincent at this point, because we've seen him being surrounded by other people throughout every time we've seen him. So the one time he doesn't have backup, he ends up dead. Now, also speaking about convenience, we see Tony arrives wounded outside Maeve's house. Pretty damn quick how he was able to get there, or at least that's the way it was edited. As we watch again, Tony's wounded, but he lets Maeve know that they're coming. Now we see Maeve in a panic as she gathers up the kids, but she forgets the keys inside. As she heads back inside, she can't find the keys, but once she does, she goes to head back to the car, but unfortunately, Jason's here. Maeve is now face to face with the man responsible for the deaths of his father, Cliff, and recently her uncle Robbie. Man, I wanted Maeve to kill him right then and in that moment, especially when we see Harper comes inside looking to help Maeve, and Jason points the gun at little Harper. Man, it's been a minute since I've been wanting to see a character die so badly, which we'll see here in a second, but we go back to the scene as Maeve tells Jason she's got the money and where he can find it. Now outside, Tom and Emilia arrive after tracking Tony's phone. Now Maeve takes Jason to find the money, but he sees that Emilia and Tom have arrived as he puts a gun up to Maeve's head and tells her to be quiet. Now Tom and Emilia find Tony bleeding out in his car as he tells them that Jason's inside. Now we watch as they call for backup, but they don't know exactly what they're walking into. Now we see Emilia looks upstairs and she's attacked from behind by Breaker as he puts her in a headlock. Now, I could just be making this up in my mind, but I felt like in this moment for the character Emilia, she was experiencing being attacked and abused by her abusive ex-husband. As we witness her managing to break free and she shoots and kills Breaker. Now, the gunshot echoes creates a distraction. Jason uses it to his advantage, forcing Maeve to move forward to his car, but we see them get into a little bit of a scuffle, but he manages to take her hostage as Tom and Emilia closes in. Meanwhile, we see Harper getting out of the car. She tells her little brother Wyatt to go in the trunk, which reminded me what Maeve did to Sam back in episode 2, as we see her wanting to help out Maeve, and I know I'm not the only one that was thinking this in the moment. I thought to myself, we are about to watch Harper accidentally get shot and die. Now, as they get closer, the how did she end up here came to mind in this moment as Tom sees Harper in Tony's car, but Tony's not in the front seat, as Jason comes across the back of his car and we see Tony in the back seat as he shoots and kills Jason and shoots him in the head. Now, Tom checks on Maeve and sees the bag of money, which will be important in a little bit, as we see the cops arrive and Tony's unconscious, but he did save Maeve before passing out, in a way making up for his sins and not being able to save Lizzie from Jason hitting her with his car, but again, he was able to save Maeve. Again, I would have loved if Maeve was the one that would have killed Jason to get her get back to what happened to her dad and also Robbie, but at the end of the day, I'm happy that Jason met his maker. I don't know why, but I do feel bad for Jason and Aaron's kids, and now they're orphaned, which only adds to the tragic tally of kids in this show who have lost their parents due to their parents' own choices. Now at the hospital, Kathleen faces the blowback from the feds. But on the positive side, the case is officially closed. But there's a discrepancy of the missing money, which means that Tom allowed Maeve to keep the money. Yet again proving he's a man of his word, assuring Maeve and the kids are safe like he promised Robbie.
You know what they say about wisdom, Kath?
No.
It's knowing what to overlook.
Now we watch Tom paying Tony a visit who survived his gunshot as he's looking for absolution. Tom, however, wisely points out that people often inflict their own penance.
Aren't you gonna give me my penance?
I never gave anyone penance. People beat themselves up enough on their own.
This season's long exploration of religion, regret, and forgiveness culminates in this poignant exchange. So I guess it's safe to assume that Tony confessed his ties to the Dark Hearts and he went on to go to prison. I'm actually happy with this conclusion for Tony because after episode 6, I was hoping that he wasn't going to turn and lean into the idea of like getting away with all of this. Instead, he resisted the darker path, and in the end, his actions led to his accountability. I'm also glad we got to see Tom not give up on the case and making sure those all involved were taken down, even though I'm sure there's other members of the Dark Hearts who will just simply replace Jason, Perry, and Vincent. Season 2, you say? Now that the dust has settled, time to face the reality of Tom's most important case, and that's Ethan's trial. I don't know why this is hitting me now, but was Tom's reckless pursuit of the Dark Hearts a way of him avoiding the painful truths at home? Kind of like a dangerous distraction? The more he gets involved in his case, the less he can think about Ethan? Either way, we see Tom and Emily discuss Sam, and Tom thanks her for taking care of him. She's also been protecting her father this whole time, and the topic of her statement comes up, and his time to protect her and speak the truth about Ethan has to come. As we cut to the next morning at Ethan's trial, as Tom protects Emily by being the one to make the statement on behalf of their family. As we watch, Tom delivers a powerful statement. He recounts Ethan's childhood, his struggles, the voices he heard in his head, and the tragic accident that led to Susan's death. But he also shares glimmers of joy, the bright light that Ethan was as a child. In a moment of profound forgiveness, we see Tom tells his son to look at him, as Tom tells Ethan he no longer wants him to live with the shame and that he forgives him and he loves him. When the day comes for Ethan to be released, Tom tells Ethan that he will be waiting for him and he will welcome him back with open arms. This to me is Mark Ruffalo's Emmy moment. A breathtaking display of empathy and grace born from their shared trauma. He's been great all season, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like Mark Ruffalo really got his Emmy moment like we saw with Tom Pelphrey, who got many Emmy moments in this season. But this scene, this speech, to me cemented Mark Ruffalo's name as a nominee for the Emmys next year. Again, just talking about the scene, I just thought it was a beautiful moment showcasing Tom's forgiveness, something he told Sarah that he wouldn't be able to give a couple weeks ago, but also just thinking about him recently experiencing a shootout, a standoff, and seeing the death of Robbie and Lizzie, and also Tony's decision to turn himself in. All those being examples of how life is so short, and holding a grudge or not being able to show mercy for those who are in troubled positions only eats you up from the inside. And Tom now letting that go, he's able to thrive for himself but also his family. Now we see some time has passed, and I would say almost a year, due to the fact that we saw the trial which took place in June, and when we fast forward, we see Sam has his own binoculars next to Tom's, he has his own book bag with his name on it, we see a picture of him and Emily playing baseball, which we know to be a spring sport. Sam is thriving as a part of this family. As Tom has stopped drinking and his infamous drinking cup has been repurposed, we see them outside gardening, happy together, but unfortunately the news arrives as a family has been found for Sam. Now later that evening, Tom and Daniel talk about what he should do with Sam. Daniel's advice is clear. Tom should not be selfish with his love. He needs to prioritize what's best for Sam. As we cut to the decision where we see Tom find himself in a similar situation years ago as he envisioned Susan on the day they took in Emily and Ethan. The farewell is bittersweet as we watch Tom, Emily, and Sam meet and greet Sam's new family. And in a quiet, hopeful gesture, we watch as Tom begins preparing Ethan's room, a silent promise for his return. Now, going back to the decision, I disagree with it. I might be wrong, but I felt Tom would have made for a good foster father for Sam. Plus, speaking of Sam, I think he wanted to stay, right? He seemed comfortable. He loved being with Tom and out gardening and being with his, pseudo foster sister, Emily. I think he wanted to live there, and also thinking about the fact that he has to start over from scratch with this brand new family. So let me know if you all thought the decision was wise. Was it the right decision in the context of what we've seen in the show? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Now back at Maeve's, we see her packing up the car with all of their things as they're headed 6 hours away to a new life with a new opportunity with this money. As we see, Maeve takes a photo of the house, a reminder of her dad, Billy, and her uncle, Robbie, a mix of good and bad memories as we watch them drive away. As our final shot shows Tom looking out the window, we see him with a peaceful smile. He's found his silence, he's found relief, and I believe he's regained his faith. The journey has been a tough one from the first time we met Tom back in episode 1, and it was marked with violence and loss, but in the end, Tom has found a measure of peace, ready to embrace a brighter future. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of season 1 of Task. So how do we all collectively feel about this 7th and final episode? Me, I feel pretty good. Last week, I spoke my piece about how I felt that episode 6, for me, was the end of the chapter of the stories that I took the most interest in. And going to this episode, I looked at this episode as more of a chapter of an epilogue. we got to see the conclusion of the case. We saw them take down the key figures in the parts of the Dark Hearts in Perry, Jason, and Vincent. Tony turned himself in. Tom's at peace with Ethan, and Maeve and the kids are safe. Now, I've spoken my truth on the stories that led this episode and how I wasn't as engaged with them, and that being Ethan, Sarah, and Emily, and some of the Dark Hearts in their eternal affairs. I don't personally feel like Emily really got the most satisfying endpoint to her story, considering the amount of time that we spent with her in this season. I also felt the conclusion that we got from the Dark Hearts with Jason and Perry in particular wasn't the payoff I thought that we were headed towards. But with that said, despite my lack of enthusiasm towards them, I still found the performances to be great, but also I appreciate the themes and the characters' arcs that were explored. Whether it was broken families due to a tragedy, or fatherhood, or guilt, or shame, or forgiveness, just to name a few. Now, sharing my thoughts about the performances this season, I thought every single actor who graced the screen really brought their A game. For me, the standout performances were starting off with Mark Ruffalo, who I've been a fan of for as long as I can remember. I love the subtlety. I love the complications of the character, and he didn't have to say much to you to understand what's going on in his head. Let's talk about Tom Pelphrey, who I talked about a couple weeks ago. Big fan of his. This was a phenomenal, in my mind, maybe even career-defining performance, even though what he did with Ozark was just phenomenal. But Tom Pelphrey continues to show that he's one of the most underrated actors working in Hollywood. We have Emilia Jones, who I have seen for quite a while now. She was great in Coda. She was also great in Lock and Key on Netflix. I like everything I've seen her in. I thought that she was phenomenal as Maeve. Also want to give a shout out to Thuso and Mbedu. I have been a fan of her since seeing her in the incredible Underground Railroad by Barry Jenkins, but she was also phenomenal in The Woman King. Such a powerful yet subtle but strong and just a awesome performance by her. What a star on the rise. And last but not least, even though I can't stand his character in House of the Dragon and even points in this show, I got to give a shout out to Fabien, who was phenomenal. Again, taking my baggage away from House of the Dragon, he's another great up-and-coming actor, and I thought he did a great job of portraying Tony Grasso with the complexities and the complications of him being the leak. Was he the leak? Was he not the leak? And ultimately, we saw how that played out, and I really enjoyed his performance. And again, even though I didn't mention everyone on top of this cast, again, those were my standouts, but I thought everyone in the show, all the actors, the directors, of course, the writer that we know from Mayor of Easttown, all did a great job. Overall, this was both an exciting show, but also a very intimate show. The storytelling was a ticking time bomb of a thriller over the course of these past 7 weeks. Tass brilliantly explored life's moral complexities in all of its shades, with the writing that once again delivered raw but relatable, grounded characters. I read in an interview, or I might have saw this interview when the show was leading up to when it premiered, and there was a conversation about the comparisons of this show and Mayor of Easttown, which again take place in the same universe, is from the same writers, but Mayor of Easttown was more of a whodunit, and it was a great whodunit, whereas Tass was more focused on the why the people did what they did. Why did Robbie and crew rob those houses? Why did Tom give up on himself and his family? Why did Jason kill Billy? Why did Tony help the Dark Hearts? All examples of questions that guide us through this series. Now, while Task can definitely come off as a procedural type of show, but I think it really shined in exploring the deep sense of humanity and the authenticity that comes with that. Now, final things I want to mention before heading out. Some of my favorite scenes that I can remember from this show have to start off with that first family dinner that we saw at Tom's house about Ethan's reveal. I also got to give a shout out to Maeve hiding Sam twice in this series, which just had me on the edge of my seat. Got to give props to the shootout sequence from last week, which very much reminded me of something from Heat, which, speaking of the Heat, we got to talk about that car scene between Tom and Robbie. Also, speaking of Tom, him confronting Tony and the satisfaction of watching Jason finally die. And last thing I want to mention, since this does come from the same universe, is from the same creator of Mayor of Easttown, which show did I prefer more, Mayor of Easttown or Task? Now, this definitely deserves a further conversation, maybe at a later date, but as I'm talking to you all right now in this moment, in my bones, I think I'm going to go, and it's not a big gap, but I think I'm going to go with Mayor of Easttown. I've lived with that show more. I've watched that show on a more of a rewatch. I plan on rewatching Task at some point later this year again. But right now, I'm going to go with Mayor of Easttown because for my sensibilities, I love a good whodunit element to a show, but also the internal struggles that we saw with the characters, including the great performance by Kate Winslet and Evan Peters. This was a phenomenal cast. But speaking of phenomenal, I can't shake the scene in the kitchen with Julianne Nicholson. Like, it was so heartbreaking. It was some of the best acting I've ever seen. And last thing we'll talk about here is that there's apparently talks about a season 2 of Task, which could potentially bring back characters like Tom, played by Mark Ruffalo, but he would be around potentially a new Task team. So I ask you all, is that something you all would be interested in, seeing a season 2 of Task? With that said, I think I've said all I want to about this episode and the show overall, so let's wrap up my breakdown of episode 7 of Task. It is now time to hear what you all thought about this episode. Comment below your thoughts about everything we discussed. What did you think about the episode? How did you feel about everything being wrapped up? Share your overall thoughts about the show as a whole. Would you consider this one of the best shows of the year? I definitely do. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite episode? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So what's next for the channel? I still have one more episode to cover for those that are watching Gen V Season 2. I'll have that coming soon. I have 2 more episodes to cover on Only Murders in the Building. And beginning October 26th, I'll be covering the next HBO Sunday night show, Welcome to Derry. Now, if you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I really, really appreciate y'all. And also, just a shout out to everyone that's watched all these breakdowns for the past 7 weeks. I have enjoyed watching this show, but I've enjoyed it even more covering the show and reading you all's comments and feedback. It's been incredible. So again, thank you all. But the special word, the secret word of the week, put it in the comments right now. #forgiveness. Thank you all for watching or listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit that like button. I would really appreciate the support. And when you all do hit the like button on YouTube, there's a hype feature. You can hype this video, which spreads this to new viewers. Speaking of new viewers, do me a favor, man. Hit that share button. Share this video, this breakdown to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. And last but not least, consider subscribing to the channel for more breakdowns for movies and TV shows. And if you all are listening to this via podcast, I appreciate you all for listening. Please do me a favor, leave your thoughts in the comments on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a review and subscribe and follow the podcast. I would really appreciate it. Also, if you all can do me a favor, I don't anticipate you all to watch it in its entirety, but whenever I do a season finale or do like a breakdown of all the episodes, I make this large video recapping every video. So again, it'll probably be close to 2 hours long. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but definitely give that video a like, share that video. That will be dropping pretty soon. Alrighty, y'all, don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll see you really soon with more reviews for movie and shows and more breakdowns coming soon to the channel. I'll see you guys soon.